What up? What up? What up? It is the long awaited return of the Shark Cove. It is so good to be back. It seems like, oh man, it feels like it's been forever since we were last on air, and it very well may have. This is just kind of what happens in the off season, and I am super excited that we've got the EU Masters starting tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I've had it circled on my calendar. I watched the planes, but now we have a 6-game slate for the DFS. Oh man, it's great. We've got 2 different qualifiers. They really went all out for this first day of EU Masters, a lot more than maybe we expected. I do have a sneaky suspicion based on the contest, based on where they are in terms of entries right now, that we may end up with a little bit of overlay. And as such, those contests are going to shrink. So, make sure you get out there, register your tournaments, especially the main 5K to first, 2,500 to second. It's not a bad contest. It's better than what we get for LCS. And then there are a couple other mid-range contests out there as well. So, without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's talk about who's in the EU Masters. Let's talk about the groups. Let's maybe talk about some futures before we get into the DFS. Now, we don't have any guests. Not a lot of people watch the European Academy Leagues like I do. So, if somebody does watch it and is watching, we're live right now. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to have somebody else come on, especially if you watch some of these smaller regions. But even if you watch some of the larger ones or only a couple of them, let me know. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's bring this up. Let's take a look at what we have here. We've got 4 groups that are going to be kicking off tomorrow. Not all of them are kicking off tomorrow, but, in Group A, we've got AGL Rogue. Excuse me. Absolutely dominant team in the Ultra League. 21-3. That's a combined record for the regular seasons and playoffs. Massive kill per win. This was just an absolutely bloody team. They did slip up a couple times throughout the year, but overall they handled business. And when it got into the playoffs, they 3-0'd. This is a very strong team. It is difficult to kind of gauge how strong some of these Ultra League teams are at this point, because a lot of the Polish players, a lot of the good Polish players have been picked up and gone to other leagues. So the level of competition within the UL is not what it was even just like 2 years ago. Nevertheless, Rogue did what we thought they would do throughout the regular season. Absolutely dominant, super strong. All of their metrics are above and beyond, what you see even from some of these teams that dominated lesser regions. Then we have CZE. I'm not going to try and pronounce this as a whole. It's just not something that I've got here. But they went 17-4. They were in the Baltic League. Kills per win, pretty good. We'll talk about them. But they're also in a group with Intrac Spandu and then Vitality B, a team from the Prime League, and then Vitality from the LFL. In past seasons, Vitality had failed to qualify, always sneaking in as the LFL representative that needed to go through the play-ins. And last spring, both times they were knocked out. They did have a brief stumble this year in the groups. They lost a game. They almost lost the second game, but they handled the business that needed to be handled in the knockout stage. And now they find themselves in what actually looks like probably the weakest group of the 4. In Group B, we've got the Gamer Legion. They are the Prime League representative, the number 1 seed. This was a team that was very similar to actually Rogue in the LEC. They ran through the first half of the season undefeated. There were a couple really close calls. This team felt kind of fraudulent at times. And that really came to pass towards the end of the season. They dropped a couple of games, and this wasn't, a team dropping games because they had secured it or they had, some weird comps played against them. This is just a team that shouldn't have been undefeated, that got away with a lot of things, and regression just coming in and taking full force. They did lose to Intrac Spandu in the playoffs, had to go through the lower bracket, and then they were able to defeat them 3-0 in the finals. So Gamer Legion, it's a strong team. We've got a couple different faces on this Gamer Legion team, not the Gamer Legion team that you are probably used to from years past when they were in the EU Masters. We'll take a quick look at that a little later on in the show, but they're in a group that also has Carmine Corp, had to go through the play-in stage, had a whole bunch of different situations throughout the regular season for them. They started off really, really hot. Then they lost a couple of games. They went through a bad streak. It was looking really rough for Carmine. They were able to pull it together. They avenged most of their losses, if not all of them, and looked really strong going into the playoffs. They faltered there, were knocked into EU Masters play-ins, but they looked utterly dominant in the play-in stage, and they should. Now, Phantasma, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be real honest, I followed as many of these leagues as I could. This Greek league was not one that I watched a ton of. Phantasma, we'll talk a little bit about them. X7 Esports, this is a team that I have my biggest futures on this team. We've got a couple big-name Koreans on this team. We'll talk about them, but they won the NLC. They were completely dominant in doing so, and I'm excited to see what they can do in what I think is possibly. This is a pretty strong group. The next one, Group C, is actually super strong as well. When we look at Bifrost, this is a team that went through the play-in stage. I thought that they were kind of fraudulent, but they played another fraudulent team in Barcelona out of the Super League, and what Bifrost does really well is they team fight really well. And there's another team that we'll talk about in a different group that team fights really well and was able to, take that prowess and their ability to, win fights at objectives, even in a deficit, and take that and bring themselves here to the EU Masters. Now, Bifrost was able to win the regular season by way of tiebreaker over X7. They did go through the playoffs, beat a couple of the NLC's other strong teams, but then just had the floor wiped with them by X7, and that's something that we can expect. Now, they find themselves in a group with one of the tournament favorites, Fnatic Team Queso. Now, Fnatic in years past had been a team that played in the NLC. They decided to go ahead and pick up Team Queso and play in the Super League, which I think is a much stronger league. And it was always my knock. It was my knock on XL. It was my knock on Fnatic coming out of the NLC. And it's kind of the knock on Bifrost and even X7 to some extent, is that the competition in that league just isn't as good. I don't know what it is about people that speak English as a first language and their inability to be utterly dominant in League of Legends. But, I guess English native speakers, there's some type of issue there. But Fnatic looked fantastic to their namesake. 22-3. We'll talk about a couple of those losses because I don't pin them on them as much. Rightfully a tournament favorite out of a much stronger league than they usually play out of. And like I said, just took care of business. But they are in this group with Bifrost. They are in this group with BDSA, who has one of the biggest names in the tournament. Everybody knows, especially if you're in the esports department Discord, especially years past, that you've got Crownshot. And I don't even think Crownshot's the best player on this team. They've had their ups and their downs, and it's difficult to assess some of those ups and downs and how they're going to be applicable into this tournament because the LFL has those big names. Is the LFL overrated? We're going to find out. There's an LFL team in every single one of these groups. I will tell you, at the very least, the LFL was one of the most entertaining leagues to watch. A lot of close games, and that's why I say we're going to learn. BDSA lost one of their games, I think, to Carmine, won the other one. They had a 3-2 loss to LDLC in the finals. Vitality played well with these teams, so there were a couple other teams in contention within that league. BDSA just managed to kind of stick it out. They are the most expensive on the DFS slate. They are one of the favorites to win this tournament, and they are in a group that they're going to have to prove it to get out of. Now you've got Eska Gaming. Look, I don't have high hopes for them. I think they're one of the weaker teams. We'll go through that. They played well in the Ultraliga. They were not a top. They were a top team at times, but they got handled pretty pretty easily by Rogue, and I think that's what they're going to end up with. Tough draw for them, just a really tough draw here. And then we've got Althea Esports coming out of the PG National region. Interesting team. Again, I don't. Some of these minor league teams, I don't put a lot of faith into them. They usually don't make it to the knockout stage. Maybe they pick up a game. Maybe they can play spoiler. As you can see, a lot of these teams bring in very high kill per wins to this tournament. But is it going to be applicable to when the level of competition is higher? Some of these smaller regions have, 6, 7, 8 teams, and just the level of competition is not there. If you're good in these regions, you end up getting picked up, going to the Prime League, the LFL, the NLC, the LEC, or any one of these other kind of more major minor regions. Now, they are in a group with the Bisons. Bisons are just a really interesting team. I can't wait to talk about them. They do some really crazy stuff in draft. We'll talk about their game against Fnatic late in the season. They should be able to at least put up some entertaining games and show off some off-meta stuff, whether it's Gnosis in the support role, but we've also seen them play Ari in the top lane. We've seen them play Zeri outside of the bottom lane. I don't think we're going to see that at this point in the game, but they're in another group with the LFL champions, LDLC. This is a team that reminds me so much of Mad Lions last year, and they're very much a better version of Biofrost in the sense that this team had won more games in a deficit than I've ever seen any team outside of like Mad Lions. It just didn't matter what was put in front of them, where they were at in the game. They would find a way to win the team fight. They'd find a way to win the game, and they just kept getting away with it. We saw 2 of their 3 wins against BDSA in the LFL final were just miraculous, come from behind, boom, boom, boom. Then they go ahead, take the Nexus, and you're like, well, they should have lost that game. Does make me kind of worried. Like, when does that kind of come to fruition? Like you can only do that for so long, right? And that's what I thought about this team. You can only do this for so long, but they did it throughout the entire LFL season. They did it throughout the entire playoffs. Very reminiscent, though, to me of Bifrost. Very reminiscent to me of this Gamer Legion team. A couple just teams that, in a lot of ways, are, a lot of the statistics are going to tell you that they're semi-fraudulent. You look at this LDLC team, their early game rating is relatively low. And, when we get into these big tournaments with these teams that have good records, usually you see this a lot higher. It's more reminiscent of what you see right here in Group C with an 84, 74, 72. A 49 is just super, super bad. But they come with their late game. As you can see, it's almost, I think it's the highest, or it's pretty close to the highest out there. Significantly higher than most teams, except for the Bisons within their own group. And then we've got one of my favorite teams. We've got the Unicorns of Love, sexy edition, led by a mid laner that some of you may know. You may remember the name. It's Ruby. This team is absolutely bloody, the bloodiest team in the Prime League. Not as bloody as, let's say, some of these other minor region teams, but when we look at the majors outside of AGO Rogue, this team has the highest kills per win. They were super hot in the play-ins. It's just a matter of how good is the Prime League. This is the number 3 representative out of there. And if anything we've learned from years past, the Prime League sometimes comes in and feels a little overrated. You might remember Big coming in last year, looking real good. They were one of my favorites to, take the tournament. Both in spring and in summer, they fell short. Some of those guys have been transferred off of that team. They've come into the LEC, and they just haven't looked as good as you might expect or hope them to look. So, that's where we're at. We'll go back to the sheet. I want to bring up the futures right now. You have one last opportunity to get the futures. Let's take a look. I just want to make sure it's on my screen, and it is. Okay, so favorites to win this tournament. We've got Fnatic, we've got LDLC, we've got Team BDSA. I don't want any part of any of those 3 teams. I think Carmine Corp at plus 600, it's a stacked roster. They probably have the best top laner in the entire tournament in Cabashard. They have a debatably the best ADC in Reckless and a good supporting cast around them. They do lack a consistent, strong team jungler. 113 is just not it. So that's the knock on them. At plus 600, I do have some wagers on them. Now you might want to take something out on Vitality B. Unfortunately, I think you could get them in play-ins around plus 1,600. They looked a little bit weak at times to me. I'm off of them. I don't want them at plus 800. I grabbed X7 Esports at plus 1,000. I grabbed AGO Rogue at plus 1,000. Both of these teams dominated the regions. Both of these teams look fantastic. Is it going to translate over into EU Masters? I'm not sure. But when we take a look at who's in some of these groups, AGO Rogue should very well get out of their group, and that's something that I like. When it comes to X7, it is a little bit harder. And I think any one of these four teams here you can take a wager on. Gamer Legion looked really strong. Will they be able to retake that form? I don't think so. Intrack looked great towards the end of the year at plus 2,500. Maybe it's worth a shot. I am going to go ahead and I put some wagers on UOL. In fact, they capped me out. They kept me out at like $50, but at 33 plus 3,300, I think that's as good as anything. And look, Bifrost, great team fighting team. Are they going to be able to team fight their way to a championship? Probably not. But we have seen teams come out of the NLC, specifically, JDXL last year, or it was BTXL. Now it's JTXL. They didn't make it into the tournament. They didn't make it into playoffs, but they were a team that last year were able to excel for a pun there and get into the finals. So I think Bifrost at plus 5,000, if you want to throw 20, 30, 40, $50, whatever they're going to let you throw on there, whatever you feel comfortable, go for it. Bison's, Eska, all these other minor league teams, you're just wasting your money. They're not going to win. Don't bet on it. So let's talk about who's playing tomorrow and how we're going to approach this with some of the betting lines. First things first, let's bring this up. EU Masters, boom. So we're kicking it off, 11 a.m. Eastern. We are getting an absolute banger. We're going to learn a lot about these two teams. We've got AGO Rogue, as you can kind of tell, I am super high on. I haven't placed a bet yet, but I probably am. This was at plus 116 earlier this week. Vitality B is obviously getting some of the money. Rightfully so. They should be the favorite. They did play in the perceived stronger region, but when we look at a lot of the different things that the players that come from there, look, Vitality is strong, but Rogue is too. Let's take a look and see who plays on Rogue. Both of these teams for DFS are relatively inexpensive because they are playing each other, and this is kind of a coin flip match, one of the two. You might recognize some of these names. You've got Sinovac in the top lane. You've got Rabble and Knight as the mid jungle duo. If you remember, if you're a COVID LOL guy, these guys were on that Gamer Legion team that was a play-in favorite. The only time they did DFS for the play-ins, they had some some good games. And then you have Lucker. Lucker was the ADC last year for this team, so we do have a pretty significant amount of experience here. One of the things that I like to look at too, pretty diverse champion pools. As you can see, each one of these players have played a variety of different champs. You can even see that Lucker will play a mages in that bottom lane. Obviously, this team last year played through Lucker. They are an ADC-centric team, even when the meta wasn't necessarily that. They still played through it. I think you want to put Lucker in a lot of your lineups. I think you want to put Rabble in your lineups. This is a team that I'm pretty excited about. And, as we look at this, if they can get Leona, any of these are going to actually look like pretty strong picks because, again, they have one of the best records in the league. But when we look at this, let's see, where are we going to go? So let's go take a look at the Ultra Leagues. This was a 15-3 season for them. They dropped a couple of games. They dropped it to Eska. They dropped it to Illuminar, which was a bad game. And then they also dropped it to Camille and Friends. But Iron Wolves, they handled them. They handled Eska. And when they went into the playoffs, they 3-0'd Iron Wolves. They 3-0'd Team Eska. I feel pretty good about this Rogue team. Whereas when we take a look at Vitality, a little bit different, not necessarily as diverse of a champ pool, but these are some names that you should know. Shizenda in the top lane, Skeens was in the LEC last year, Jessica, Jack Troll, Diplex. If you're wanting to play an LFL team and you want to play them with maybe like BDSA, this is a combination that you can do here. When we look at their tournament results, or just actually in the let's take a look at how this team played through. First and foremost, they went 11-7 during the regular season. When we're talking about against the big teams, they split their series with Carmine. They split their series with LDLC. They split it with Misfits, and they split it with BDSA. So the games that they were losing were against the top tier talent within the league. The only game that they really kind of lost that they probably shouldn't was this game against Mirage Iliandra, which they surprised a couple of teams. There's no hate here. When we look at how they got through the playoffs, Vitality came in, they beat Misfits, lost 3-2 to BDSA. If BDSA is one of the favorites to win this, Vitality is as good as anybody. However, when we get into the play-ins, there is a specific game. Let's go to actually the scoreboards. And I think it was on day 2, the second half. All right, so versus Iron Wolves. Really kind of a disrespectful draft here. You've got Akali, LeBlanc, Pike. This just wasn't a game that they were able to get anything going. They've got 3 assassins. They weren't assassinating anybody. This was a game that they should have won. They didn't. Lost me a couple dollars. Wasn't happy about it. But then they went and played. This game ended up as 21-14. However, they were down for the majority of this game. They were able to come back. Pretty standard draft here. I don't see any problem with it. You are seeing that there is Suzenda, like being one of the better players on this team, being one of the more experienced players on this team, does have a little bit more of a diverse champion pool. What you do find when we're looking at some of these lower region teams, like For the Win, where there was somebody else in the play-ins that maybe their top laner just can't play like a Lucian. And so when somebody blind picks a Gnar into a Lucian that's perceived to go into the mid lane, you can't take him to the top lane. Maybe the top laner just doesn't know how to play him. But when we're talking Vitality, they can actually do a lot of these things. So, I gave you a lot of mush there. I didn't make a lot of stands, but I am backing Rogue. I think Rogue win this game. I think they shock a lot of people. I think Vitality is going to have a tremendous amount of ownership because they are affordable. People will see that they're in the LFL. I don't think Rogue has performed necessarily super strong in years past, despite coming out of the Ultra League. Would I be surprised if they lost this game? Absolutely not. But I think Rogue can come in, and then it's just a battle of what stylistically is going to happen. When Rogue wins big. They have a ton of kills. Vitality B, though, is the lowest deaths per loss in this tournament. Do you want to put your money on Rogue in a 50-50 game against Vitality, who doesn't give up a ton of kills? I don't know. That's a decision you might have to make. When we look at these teams and a couple of the other peripheral stats, First Blood, Rogue a little bit higher. First Tower, Rogue significantly higher. And then First Dragon, they're both about 40%. These are all in wins over here. Obviously deaths per loss and loss. Now, average game time, Rogue, as you can see, did tend to roll over their competition, 31.5 minutes, whereas we see Vitality at 37.3. Again, I think Rogue win this game. I do have my concerns in regards to the pace of play, what kind of kills we're going to see, not just on the basis that we have Vitality at a low death per loss, but also it's the first game. It's the first day. Teams tend to play a little bit slower. So just keep that in mind. I mean, all the teams tend to play slower. We do have 2 teams, though, that have been here before to some extent. Vitality, not necessarily. But these guys have played in big situations. I don't think they're going to be rattled, and I don't think that that's something we have to worry about too much. I'm picking Rogue over Vitality. That's going to be the first pick. So let's go ahead. If anybody has any questions about this, go ahead, chime in the chat. I'm talking to myself here. It's nice when you guys put some comments in there. I appreciate you, Savage. I saw that earlier. Sorry I didn't put it out there, but yeah, hey, not a problem. This sheet is available in the esports department Discord if you want to go ahead and grab it. Let's take a look. What do we got here? Game number 2. We've got Intrac Spandu versus CZE. Again, look, here's an interesting spot. It's a best of 1. If you watched the show before, when we talk about these best of 1 situations, usually if it's a plus 200, plus 250, we want to take a stab at it. I do think that this is a situation that we can take a stab at this. Intract, had a good late run. This was not a team that in the beginning half of the year I had pegged as a team that we were going to see in EU Masters. They really came on late. Let's kind of dive into both of these teams, though, and take a look at their path to the EU Masters. So let's take a look at the 2 teams first. Similar records. Kills per win. Intrac, not so much. Deaths per loss, a ton. CZE, I like this is a team that I do think will be a very popular dog. Both of them are very strong early game teams. Mid to late game, not so much. But CZE, 35-36 goal difference at 15, 17, and 4. That's kind of what you would expect, but that goal difference at 15 is in wins. Are they going to be able to assert themselves against a major league team like Intrac from the Prime League, like they were with all of their, Baltic counterparts? I don't know. Some of the things that are kind of, comparable here is their dragon percentages are similar. Their first bloods percentage is similar, but in every single one of their wins, they got that first tower. So, I mean, look, I don't know. Maybe if they lose first tower and you have a live betting situation, you bet the other side. Or maybe if they get the first tower, hey, you throw some extra money on it. But I will tell you this, if they get the first tower, you're probably not getting better odds than where you're at plus 350 right now. Let's take a look at this team, though. So, Intrac, Spandu, probably saying it wrong. Not the largest kind of champion pool for some of these champs. Now, I'm not going to hold it against any of the ADCs. So Kinetic, it's a name I believe some people should be familiar with, and Obsess. Both only played 7 champs. Pride, Prime, and Special, a little bit more diverse. Let's take a look at both of these situations, and let's take a look at each one of these players because I want to see the experience that they have. So Kinetic, this is a guy that came from Schlaki. Okay, that's where we know him from. The Evolution, SO4 Evolution, they were in the EU Masters last year. I think you'll kind of maybe remember them. They had they went through the play-ins. They made it to the main event. They got beat down, but they did have an upset, or not an upset, but an upset over I think it was Excel. And based off of their performance there, Nuclearant did get a job in the LEC, came off, and that team just didn't look as good in summer. So that's where you remember Kinetic and you'll remember Upset. So they've been here before. That's something you can put on. Fnatic Rising, Pride is a guy that's been here before as well. They made it through the play-ins, the main event, number 2. So this team has some players that have experience. When we look at Prime, not so much. We look at Special, pretty extensive background, not just playing in the LEC, but playing in a lot of these academy regions, and recently has played in the main event of EU Masters. So a lot of experience. And when you kind of look at how this team came together at that point, they went 12-6. Their wins came again, or at least against the big teams. They went 0-2 against Gamer Legion, but I will tell you that there was a game that they absolutely should have won. They dropped a game to SK Prime. They dropped a game to Mouse. They dropped a game to some of these stronger teams within the region. As we look at kind of their track through it, they were 0-2, 1-4. This is a new team playing together for the first time. They really needed to find their way. Week 3, they go ahead, and that's a super week. They end up getting 2. They're going 2-1. Then they win again. I guess they actually play three games a week. A lot of times they go 5-6. Then they're 7-6. Then they're 10-6. Then they're 12-6. So this is a team, like I said, that really found their stride. Is this break going to be one that is a problem for them? I don't know. It could very well be the case. As we go into the spring playoffs, we see that they beat Gamers Legion in this first round. Then they were able to, off the back of that, go straight into the finals where they got 3-0'd. I don't know. I think Intract wins this game. I think that they're a better team overall. I think when people are looking at different teams to stack, at least in regards to the minor regions, this might be a spot where people try and attack. And I don't blame it. I'm definitely going to have some exposure to CZE, but not a ton. I'm going to bet them at plus 340. It's just too hard to get at. Or get away from, but I think Intract takes this game. So we've got Rogue and Intract, and I think you can play both of those teams pretty well together. But, for what it's worth, these guys, the Spandus, probably not going to play much of them in DFS. BDS Academy versus Eska Gaming, one of the biggest spreads that we have on the slate. Look, I'll play Eska. It's plus 390. BDS has had some bad games. I, again, don't think Eska is very good. I don't necessarily think that BDSA at the price that they're going to be for DFS is the play either. This game is kind of a full fade for me. Not super interested in it just anywhere. So take it for what it's worth. But let's say you are going to play a BDS Academy. Let's go pull up their stats. Obviously, we have a pretty some big names here. Pretty extensive champion pools. I will tell you that if you're going to play this team, you want to play Zico in the mid lane. He is the glue that puts this team together. Yes, Crown Shot has a little bit better kill share. His kill participation is on point. This is completely in wins and losses. But when we take a look at in wins, just to give you an idea, they're about the same. Nothing really changes too much overall. But I like the mid-jungle duo. I think that they carried a lot of the games. They were the reason that this team was able to go as far as they were. It's not to say that like Crown Shot wasn't good, because he certainly had his games where he carried. He was pretty versatile and he was safe. You didn't have to worry about him doing his job. But Zico and Shio were probably one of the strongest mid-jungle duos within the LFL. And I think that this is going to be a situation where they carry this team and get them out of this group. So we'll make some group predictions, but those are the two guys that if I was going to play and when I was putting together lineups, I was trying to figure out how I could get Zico and Shio into the lineups, make sure that they're there, whether it's a Shio in a captain role, whether it's Zico, who am I going to compare or pair it with? They are super expensive. On the other side of things, Eska, again, look, man, this team, they're here. That's all I got. They're here. I don't think that they're a good team. I think that they'll probably lose the majority of their games. I don't have a lot of faith in this team. I don't think that they score well in fantasy. I'm going to be completely off of them. Like I said, this is a game that I'm going to be significantly under-owned. And I think that there's going to be some name value in Crown Shot, and I am going to kind of leverage away from that. Next things next. Let's take a look here. What's up, Prime? How are you? Next game, we got LDLC versus Atleta. I don't know how to say that. Huge favorite here. LDLC obviously won the LFL. one of the tournament favorites. They're going against a minor region team. LDLC, the second highest cost on the DFS slate. I think that is, rightfully so. I'm going to take a couple stabs. Like, I think that I don't think Esk is good enough to win. I don't think that LDLC is going to lose this game. But, I did a kind of I said some of the stats without saying the name in the Discord channel the other day. We had the LDLC team. And I said, what if I told you that their goal difference was 174, early game rating 49, mid lane is 50, but this is a team that only gets first blood 54% of the time. They only get the first tower 31% of the time, by far the lowest in this tournament. First dragon 46% of the time, and they had just that. We just say that. Their gold per minute is good. Their GDM's okay at 128. What do you think of this team? Now, Mav went ahead and said, look, this is a team that likes to scale. They're comfortable in that. And to some degree, that's true. But you look at their average game time, it's 33.6 minutes. If you go back and watch some of these LDLC games, they're behind. They win a team fight, and then somehow they end the game. They had a situation, too, where they almost lost to a Jin mid. Like, this is a team that team fights really well. They get themselves dug into these problems. But, at some point, this isn't always going to work. Even against an inferior team, if you get into too far of a deficit, I think it's a problem. I think that this is one of my spots that I want to play in DFS. I don't think that they're going to win, but we've seen PG national teams take games in this main stage. I'm going to call it right now. They beat LDLC in game one, and that is and in fact, I think that they're going to maybe take 2 games in this group. They're not going to make it out, but they are going to beat LDLC. I'm going to go ahead and play them more than I probably should in DFS. Join me if you will. But I think that they have a real opportunity to win it. And I think that they can do it in a bloody fashion. This is one of those situations that we like to target the dogs playing against a better team because we think that they're going to win in a bloody fashion. And that is the case. That is what LDLC allows teams to do. Hopefully they can team fight their way to victory and LDLC will be left in utter shambles. Taking a look further in. Bisons and Unicorn of Love. Okay. Let's talk about these two teams. The Bisons, plus 111, Unicorns of Love, Sexy Edition, minus 145. Let's go take a look at these two teams. So the Bisons have a bunch of guys that you probably don't know. You probably haven't heard of. I certainly hadn't. Let's take a look at their experience at EU Masters, see where they came from. Coming from Sector 1 PSV. Sector 1 made it to the play-in stage. They ended up not qualifying, losing in the round robin 4-2. That was back in 2001. Okay. So this guy Gooby, I think he played in the play-in stage 2, right? No, they didn't. They didn't make it. Okay. Just looking through the. Okay, yeah, no, they were in the spring. That's right. Okay, Sector 1. They got knocked out they won in the main event or the play-ins. Got knocked out in the main event. Even made it, I think, into the MKS. Okay, yep, fantastic. Got knocked out by UCAM. I remember that now. We've got Mirwin. No experience here. We've got Oscure, no experience here. Just playing on significantly less popular teams. Okay. So, yeah, a team that doesn't have a ton of experience, a little bit, but that does kind of worry me when we're talking about this Bisons team. One of the things that I want to point out, though, and part of the reason that we were looking at it with other teams is look at these champion pools. Just absolutely huge. In fact, let's go ahead and open them back up. We've got 20 different champions played by a dude named Random. We've got Mirwin with 15 different champions. We're not going to look so much at the jungle because that looks pretty much normal. But so look, boom. We've got 18 games here. This is everything that he's played in the mid lane. Aurelia, Tryndamere, LeBlanc, Corki, Silas, Ivern, Viger, Zareth is a mid laner you will see a lot in the SVP. We've got Zed, Ari, Akshan, Nasus, and Zillion. So, a lot of depth here. And then even in the playoffs, we saw the Seraphine come out, Karthus, Jace, Victor, even an Ezreal mid and a Yasuo game. So we see that he has a pretty large champion pool. We go to Ascure. He's the support. He plays a ton of different champions too. And he plays some kind of strange ones as well. You've got your normal ones here. I think that they played a Nasus. Okay, they did not. So these are just your normal champions, but can't really ban him out. Mirwin is the top laner, I think. Okay, so yeah. So the top laner, let's see who he played. The promotion tournament. But during the spring, Akali, Karma, Gwen, Ziri, Ari, Camille. Yeah, that's right. Ari, top lane. Gragas, Graves, Kennen, Lulu, Malphite, Gangplank, Gnar. Played the Ari again in the playoffs. So this team likes to do a lot of off-meta stuff. They do a lot of weird things. And in fact, they were one of the teams that beat Fnatic in the regular season. Now, at this point, Fnatic was undefeated. They had pretty much locked up the number one seed. Take it for what it's worth. We get a Ziri in the top lane. We've got a Seraphine in the bot lane. We've got a really weird comp here, but a strong comp nonetheless. They were able to get this win. This was, probably 12.3 or 12.4. So it was quite a while ago. I don't think that we're going to see Ziri in the top lane, but a good game here. And this is kind of what Bisons do. I don't think that they're a good team. I think that they're kind of a niche team that can do different things and show you different looks. That doesn't necessarily work against a team that's a good team fighting team that is, as I would say, as versatile as you. I mean, there's going to be I don't know if they're going to do mid lane bans because we've got two guys here. We've got a full team here of guys that you should recognize. We've got Ibo up in the top lane. Ibo was a top laner. I believe it was for Kick. We're going to take a look at each one of these guys. But yeah, so Kick, Neosurf, Team BDS. Ibo is a guy that has experience. He has experience on this level, was in the EU Masters, was in the LFL. Strong player. Lurox, coming from AGO Rogue. Again, a strong jungler that was taken out of that region because of his performance on Rogue. Lots of experience in the play-in, lots of experience in big, important games. Now, Reptile, on the other hand, this guy was the rookie of the year in the Prime League. Good bot laner. I mean, can you play Jinx? Can you play Aphelios? Is that going to change? Obviously, he's got some games with Ziri. He's got some games with Xayah. Played a little Misfortune Vayne. He does have a champ pool. He didn't show it during the split, but a lot of ADCs did not. The big thing and the guy that we need to look at is Ruby. Ruby from Rogue Warriors. That's right, from Afrikas. We've got Ruby down here. He played 16 different champions. Absolutely just mashed it out. 33% kill share, 71% kill participation. If you're playing UOL, and I am, you're probably playing Ruby. Put Ruby in that captain slot. Played Victor, Corki, Syndra, Ari, Cass, Vex, Azir, Vlad. Play some Zareth. This is a guy that has a enormous champ pool and is probably going to be one of the best players on the Rift in any one of these games. I like UOL to win this game. I don't think that the Bisons are a team to believe in. Minus 145, I'm backing UOL. I'm playing them in DFS. They're a bloody team. When we take a look at the sheet, 21. Bisons die a lot. You look at Bison's gold GDM, worst in the group, 1778 gold per minute. Gold difference at 15 and wins, minus 30. One of the better late game teams, and I think it's because they play some of these weird comps at scale. 33% first blood, 67% first tower, so they start to spike there with an average game time of 31. There's just a lot here that worries me. I like UOL. UOL just has stronger statistics all the way through. That's a spot that I'm going to go to. And then finally, we are kicking it off with Fnatic and Bifrost. Bifrost at plus 340 against, a Fnatic minus 595. Fnatic, one of the strongest teams, took care of business. I'm probably going to bet Bifrost. Bifrost is a team fighting team, as we discussed earlier. 19 kills per win, but Fnatic was they were a pretty bloody team. They were regularly somebody that I was betting overs on their game against whoever they were playing. They were, exceeding that 20 kill mark quite a bit. They had a couple games to drag it down. 333 GDM, one of the best gold per minute, gold difference at 15, super strong. And when it comes to some of those additional stats here, a 69% first blood, one of the strongest on the slate, 63% first tower, not so great. And didn't really care so much about that first dragon. But you can see teams that win, sometimes if they don't have that first dragon, you're going to see a little bit of a higher average game time, which you did with Fnatic. When it comes to this team, they did everything that they were supposed to. Fnatic has a very limited champion pool, but these are guys that Maxi, Baka, Bean, Oscar Rinnan, all of these guys have been on this stage before. When it comes to the regular season, they just ran through everybody. They had that game against the Bisons that they lost, and then they also dropped a game against Koi, which is a strong team towards the end of the season. But 16-2, we go into the playoffs, and they take care of business. 3-1 Barcelona, 3-0 Bisons, just did what you needed to do. So that kind of recaps it. I mean, if anybody has any questions in the chat about some of these teams, about how they got here, or any of that information, I'd happily answer it. What we're going to do is pull up a couple other things here just on some of these teams. So Bisons and Fnatic are playing tomorrow. I'm not playing Bisons personally. But if you are looking at wins, Fnatic, who do you want? The kill share is strong with Baka in the mid, so you can pair him, with another mid laner like Ruby if the lineup works. One of the things that you can see is their top laner is semi-involved, kill participation at a 60%. Pretty high, kill share at 25 and wins. So, that might be a place that you'll look for a top laner. And then Maxi gets involved, but not a ton of kills at 18. When we look at the Prime League, you're playing Intrek, Spandu, which, again, I don't necessarily recommend. You're playing it with her ADC Kinetic, 38% kill share, 75% kill participation. One of the stronger players on that team, must play in any of the stacks. And these are kind of small, aren't they? Not bad. Yeah, I'll get into that. I'll cover that. So give me a minute. Let's just run through a couple of these, and then we'll just get that and final thoughts. UIL, like I said, Ruby, 30, 76. This is the way to go. Yes, Bifrost is a playable dog for DFS. I don't expect them to win. Fnatic does seem dominant. I would not be surprised if Fnatic won this tournament. But look, you can go back and look at the games, or if you want to, you can watch the play-in knockout games. I think specifically game 1, or maybe it was game 2. I can't remember. They 2-0'd Barcelona, which was a team that lost to Fnatic 3-1 within their league. They were one of the better SVP teams. But they were kind of fraudulent too. Both of them were. Bifrost was able to just out team fight, even though that they didn't win in the laning phase. They were at a deficit, I think, in both of those games. They had a couple skirmishes, turned it at a dragon fight. That's what they do. Can Fnatic come in and feel cocky? Probably. It could happen. I like it. I think you can play Bifrost here as a dog, and a pretty big dog. I don't think a lot of people are going to play them. Just don't be surprised if they lose. So when we look at this and we look at Bifrost most recently, you are playing there an ADC heavy team and wins. No change here. Ruby obviously still around that 30%. This is an EU play-in, so smaller series of games. We're not going to talk about X7 today. We'll talk about them tomorrow, even though I like them, when we are talking about Rogue and Eska. So if you want to play Eska, I mean, you can look at this. They're an ADC team that you can play the top with. But Rogue, if you did want to play them, if you do think that they're going to be a team that's going to get some of those kills, I don't think that they're just a large stack team. Like you look at their jungle, you look at Rabble. I mean, 56 pill. My bad. Still wins 56 kill participation. Does have a little bit of a higher kill share, but this is a team. If you're playing Rogue, I think that you small stack. You can play Knight, you can play Lucker, you can even play Leon. But I want to stay away from Sinvac, and I want to stay away from Rabble if I'm going in small, like single entries, or if I'm going to play them in cash. And you really shouldn't play them in cash. They're not a team to play there. I don't think that those are the guys that you want to play. That's specifically in the playoffs. Let's see if that changed during the regular season or if that was just the playoffs. Not really. I mean, you look at this team, they get a ton of kills, but there are a lot of solo individual kills, and they're spread out. This is not a team fighting team. It's a dominant team. Does that change when they're playing a team like Vitality B? Maybe. Again, I don't think the level of competition necessarily is there, but we can just go ahead and look at Eska playing in the same league. Yeah, their numbers are slightly depressed versus other leagues. So maybe that is more symptomatic of the Ultra Liga than it is necessarily of AGO. Does that carry over? Or is this the same thing that people are seeing? I'm working through this right now just with you. Maybe I do play Rogue in a large stack. Maybe everybody that's watching this video will have the same thought here. And the people that aren't are going to look at these stats and say, look, man, and they're not going to project out so well because they're at 60% kill participation. The kill share's not there. But maybe that's just kind of a symptom of this league. Let's take a look at this as a matter of fact. Let's filter positions. Let's take a look at junglers and wins in the Ultra League. Not so much. Okay. That kind of, it's about the same. Let's go take a look at top laners. Yeah, I think look, these numbers aren't necessarily bad in the 50s. Believe it or not, this is what you see a lot of in LPL top laners, but we know how they score. So, maybe you don't play the top laner from Eska if you're playing him. Maybe you don't play the top laner from Rogue. You don't play Sinovac. You play a small stack somewhere else. Yeah, I'm good with that. Take a look at the EBL. This is a team that I think that you can play. Both sides wins. Pretty. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty even across the board. I don't think that that's a problem. Let's go back and look at this in spring. Yeah, it's Ruby, Kinetic, those guys. That doesn't change anything. And I think that there was one other one. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. We talked about them maybe defeating LDLC. If they do so, you're going to want a piece of their ADC. You're going to want, this entire team. The support, obviously, 72%, 7% kill share. That's pretty strong. Maybe you get away from the middle. Zonix doesn't seem like he's participating that much. Gabo doesn't seem like he's participating that much. Maybe you got like a 3-3. I mean, maybe you throw one of those guys in just to do it. If they do beat them, they do get a lot of kills. And I guess the concern I have is that they're having too many fights where it's going to be a situation that they're going to be team fights, that's probably not. Well, I mean, they're going to have those. It's just the way that it is. So, I mean, you want the ADC, you want the support. Pick the other two guys that you want from this team. And then take a look at the LFL. LDLC, as you can see, is all pretty equal. Exakick is, their ADC, no surprise there. But Eka, the middle, definitely a priority that you're going to have with them. We've covered BDS. And then Vitality B is pretty similar too. So, yeah, that's what I got. Now, I didn't do projections for the slate. Now, the only reason I didn't do projections is it's really difficult to kind of project how these teams are going to play against each other. But let's take a look at these games. So the chalk dog, I think, will probably be either Rogue or maybe the Bisons, maybe CZE. I think those are the three teams that are inexpensive. They're not in big games. I mean, this is not something that chalk dog, probably Bisons, I would say. Bisons or maybe Rogue. And, as we saw, I don't believe in the Bisons. I think Rogue wins. But unless you're getting a 4-stack from one of these other teams, maybe like a Fnatic, if you can do that, that's probably the only way that I'm playing that. All right, well, that's all I've got. We don't have any other questions here. You can find me on Twitter at EmerichD4U if you have any questions. I'm in the esports department Discord. Feel free to shoot me any questions there. You can find me in the Pater Discord as well. And if you're a member of Dr. Roto, you have like a personal line for me in that Discord additionally. So let's go ahead and go register some contests. Let's take it down. Let's meet back here tomorrow around the same time, 8:30, 8:45. We'll talk about what we learned, our wins, our losses, and we'll take a look at day 2 of EU Masters. So to recap, TLDW, we got Rogue, we got Intrac, we got BDS. We're taking the huge upset. Athleta, I don't know how to say it. UOL and Fnatic winning this slate. I don't know if Fnatic's winning the slate, but those are the winners for this slate. I'll talk to you guys later.